Hello and a very, very good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time to be part of today's ADSelfService Plus webinar. Today, we will be talking about user essentials for an efficient hybrid password management. Hi, I'm Sharda Murthy. I work with the marketing team here at Manage Engine. I'm a technical expert in ADSelfService Plus, and I will be the presenter for the day. If you do have any questions, please make use of the chat console. Please make use of the Q&A tab to drop in your questions. And if you'd like to share your comments, ideas, suggestion with me, if you have tips and tricks that you'd like to pass on to the fellow audience, please make use of the chat console to do so. All right, with that, I'm going to quickly jump to the session plan for the day. Today, we will be working with Manage Engine's ADSelfService Plus to achieve what you see in the agenda, password management for hybrid identities. Two important questions that I want to address here is why hybrid and the importance of password self-service. Talking about hybrid, especially with organizations on a global scale, it's important to understand that though more than 90% of organizations still very much rely on the native Active Directory, still work with on-prem Active Directory, cloud technology is catching up real fast, and a lot of us have adapted to cloud applications. It's important to be able to strike a right balance between synchronizing changes made in the native Active Directory with the advantage of cloud applications, the ease of use of cloud applications that's available today. And that is why we will be talking about how to improve password self-service or how to have better password management practices for hybrid identities. Talking about password self-service, it's a given the native on-prem offering does not allow users to take care of their own password management chores. And especially with the onset of COVID, especially with remote working, it has become a lot more critical for users to be able to take care of their own password management actions, not only from a management perspective, but also from a cybersecurity perspective. And that is why I am going to walk you through how you can achieve password self-service for all the users in your organization, not only the native Active Directory, not only for the native Active Directory, but also for cloud-based applications, starting with Azure. We will go through a live example today. I will touch upon password expiration notifications, the importance of remote web-based password changes for your Active Directory, and also some tips and tricks here and there for better password security. All right. Very, very simple, straightforward session. But before I jump into today's session, I would like to understand my audience better. So please take a couple of seconds to answer the poll that you see on the screen. I would like to know what part of the audience here today are existing customers of ADSelfService Plus or have prior experience of working with the application. If you're new to the application, if you've not experienced the application before, and you are in the process of evaluating the solution, please pick option 2. If it's neither, I would request you to humbly skip the poll. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave it up there for you to drop in your poll answers. All right. And for those of you who are new to ADSelfService Plus, who are working with the application for the very first time, I'm going to quickly pass on the demo link for you in your chat console. Please access the ADSelfService Plus demo in your chat. It's a live actionable demo. You'll be able to log in as an administrator and explore the application along with me. You will be able to get a hands-on experience of the application. And if you have any questions at any point of time, please let me know and I'll help you with the same. That said, I have my instance here. I have a test setup that I've created, a lab setup that I've created. I've also taken a remote desktop connection to my server that's physically available at my workplace. I've logged in as an administrator. I have created a couple of users under organizational units in a test domain that I've created. I've also pre-configured ADSelfService Plus for today's session. So I'm going to log in as an administrator. I will very quickly walk you through what I've pre-configured to enable users to take care of their own password self-service actions. First things first is to configure the domain. If ADSelfService Plus does not have any network limitations, firewall restrictions, and has access to the network, the domain will be automatically fetched If not, you have the provision to manually add the domain. In this particular case, I have 2 domains that I'm working with. Right here, pre-configured under domain settings. Under the configuration tab is where most of the action takes place. So what I've done here is I've created self-service policies, like we call it in-house. What I've done is I've created different self-service policies with different permissions, and these policies can be created based on OUs, groups, or on a domain level. And the user groups can depend on organizational roles, user roles, departments, organizational divisions as well, compliance mandates, geographical limitations as well. And these users can be delegated self-service permissions that you see on the screen based on the user groups that you're working with. The advantage of self-service permissions is you will be able to granularly provide access to or prevent access from certain self-service features this particular application encapsulates. So yes, I have the administrative OU or policy right here with a reset password permission. The very next thing that I need to do to enable users to take care of their own password management chores is to allow them to be able to reset their password by verifying their user identity. And this is where multi-factor authentication comes into picture. I have more than 5 authenticators that I've configured, whereas for the reset password or account unlock process, I have set a password reset or multi-factor authentication level of 2 with a couple of authenticators that I've enabled, and I've also set Microsoft Authenticator as mandatory. Pretty straightforward and easy to use application, but let's look at how things work from an end user's perspective. How does a user actually go through a password reset process? Like, since the user belongs to this particular domain, I've quickly taken a remote desktop connection. I am going to access my Gina CP screen, access the reset password or account unlock icon available right here. And this will redirect me to the ADSelfService Plus console. Experiencing a bit of a lag here, but stick with me. Yes, there we go. The very first thing that I need to do to get started on the reset password process is to key in my username and identify my domain that I'm working with, which is what I'm going to do next. All right. Enter the captcha as well. Click on continue. And yes, I have a secure code in my Microsoft Authenticator app. I've pre-configured the applications to make it easy for today's session. So I'm quickly accessing my mobile device for the secure code. The Microsoft Authenticator has an additional factor of authentication by default based on your personal device settings. I have Face ID pre-configured for accessing my Microsoft Authenticator. But once my first factor of authentication is through the mandated authenticator, I have 3 more authenticators listed on the screen. I need to work with one of the 3 authenticators. I'm going to use Google Authenticator, another app-based authentication. I click on continue here, and I have to key in the password, the time-based passcode from my Google Authenticator. In the meantime, I'm going to key in the captcha that you see on the screen. Enter the code from my mobile device, click on continue, and if my user identity verification is true, if it's successful, I will then be redirected to the reset password page. I want you to notice that in here, I can reset not only my native Active Directory password, my native domain password, but I also have the provision to reset my Office 365 account password right here. And this is possible because I have enabled password synchronization with ADSelfService Plus. I can choose to do this for multiple on-premises and cloud-based applications and allow the user to decide if they would like to reset password solely for a particular application on-prem or cloud, or would like to set one password and synchronize it across multiple applications. You can allow or you can give this privilege to users based on the advanced settings that can be customized from the console, right? So next thing to do is to reset the password. I am keying in a password that I know is strong enough, but more importantly, a password that meets the custom granular password policy that you see on the screen. I'm going to hit reset password. I've entered the captcha as well, and awaiting the password reset to be successful. In the meantime, if you do have any questions, please keep them coming. I'm going to take time to answer a couple of questions. All right, can we customize authenticators? Yes, you can. The Microsoft or Google Authenticator is not a mandatory method of authentication, or it's not the default settings. You can work with any of the authenticators that you see on the screen. You will also be able to customize it based on self-service policies that you have created to sort users into groups and configure different settings for different user groups. All right, jumping back. This is still a work in progress. I know what's happening. It takes a bit of a time because I'm working with the lab setup with certain restrictions. It takes time. So what we'll do is we'll quickly move on to the next module. I know this is going to go through. Jumping back to the agenda right here, I will walk you through the importance of password expiration notification, especially for remote users. Which brings me to an important question that I have for all of you here today. Have you gone back to office? Have you started working from your office? How is the work style in your organization? Are you going to continue to work remotely, largely remotely, or is it going to be a hybrid setup where you check into office on days when necessary and have the privilege to work remotely? Please let me know. Drop in your answers in the chat console. This question is more out of curiosity. But if you come from an organization that still is going to encourage users to work remotely, one important aspect of password self-service that you need to pay attention to is updating the cache of your Active Directory, right? That is where password expiration notification comes into picture, and it's extremely important. I have a scheduler pre-configured. It's a targeted scheduler, which is sent on specific days with targeted messages. I also have the privilege of sending out SMS and push notifications for account expiry as well. I will also be able to notify users whose passwords have already expired, notify users, managers, and administrators as well. Let me show you how this looks from an end user's perspective. I have created a dummy email address and mapped all user accounts to this particular email. All right, so what's going to happen here is I am going to receive an email every day. The scheduler runs at 12. It's quite early in the morning here in India. I'm checking in from India, and I have a couple of password expire notifications that I've received. Let me randomly pick Frank or James right here and show you that this particular user's password has expired in 2017. That's quite a long while ago. And these are the kind of accounts that you need to pay attention to as an administrator. Identify stale accounts, identify idle accounts, and revoke permissions, revoke privileges with an Active Directory, and eventually disable and delete these accounts if the user is no longer part of the organization. All right. This is one great way in which the password expiration notification comes handy, because not only are the users notified, the administrators will also be notified, the users, managers will also be notified with a report that you can send out periodically in a scheduled manner. That said, I'm also going to quickly walk you through a password expiration notification that the user Sharda has received a couple of, in fact, 1 day back. This particular user's password is going to expire on the 8th of next month. And this is a simple targeted notification. The advantage of sending out email, SMS, or push notifications for users to remind them about their password expiry is great, because users, more than 90% of end users in your organization will go about a password reset well in advance and also ensure that their VPN is in place, the password is synchronized with the cache, and also eventually synchronized with multiple other applications that heavily rely on the native Windows Active Directory password for authentication. This is critical, and this will save you from a lot of password-related help desk tickets. That said, I also want to very quickly remind you that this particular module that I spoke about, the password expiration notification, does not have any limitation. You can choose to work with this particular module of ADSelfService Plus, even if you do not have a license of the application. It's a completely free module. You will be able to notify all the users in your organization irrespective of your user license. All right, so get started, notify users right away, and see the difference in users resetting their password well in advance, well before expiry. And you will also notice a lot of users not going through the trouble of having issues authenticating their identity or having issues with logging in and accessing applications or their endpoints itself. That said, jumping back, I'm going to see if this is true. Yes, it is a successful password reset for both AD and Azure for this particular user. Let's put it to test. Let me try to take an RDP and log in with the password that I just reset. If my password is synchronized with the cache credentials, I will have a seamless access to my Windows machine today. I'm going to wait for the authentication to go through. Just a couple of more seconds. All right. I am redirected to the ADSelfService Plus page right here. And if you notice, I have two authenticators on the screen, security question answers and Microsoft Authenticator. This is because I have enabled a secondary factor of authentication for endpoint logon as well for this particular user group. So if I try to bypass the secondary factor of authentication, I will simply be denied access to log in and access my machine, simply be denied access to my machine. And this is extremely important, especially if you still want to continue to work with remote users. If you have users checking in from different parts of the world, it's important to ensure that only the right person has access to an endpoint. And even when the worst hits, even when a password is compromised, you will be rest assured that the user's identity is not easily susceptible to compromise with adaptive multi-factor authentication, all right? So yes, the password synchronization was true. Users will be able to synchronize passwords remotely with a web-based application like ADSelfService Plus right from the Gina CP screen. And these changes are reflected real time. These changes and updates happen real time. So how can a user actually go through a password change and not a reset password process with ADSelfService Plus is what I'm going to talk about next. And before I do that, I'm going to jump back to the ADSelfService Plus console right here, move to the Reports tab, and walk you through the audit report right here for the recent changes that happened today and all the other changes that the users can perform. All right. Password resets, account unlocks are all audited right here. The user attempt audit report is one of my favorite reports to work with. It gives a very clear log on what's happening in our end user's environment. I do not have any change password audit for the day, but I'm going to try to change password for a user belonging to the marketing policy. And I want you to notice the user actually does not have the privilege to change passwords from ADSelfService Plus. And before we jump to the end user console, I also want you to notice that the password synchronization with Office 365 was possible only because I have pre-configured Office 365 password sync and assigned it to two policies, admin and marketing. Very quickly, signing out as an administrator. I'm going to try to log in as Adam next. So imagine a user receives a password expiration notification. Typically, the user can be redirected to the ADSelfService Plus console, where the user can log in with the native Windows Active Directory password, which acts as the first factor of authentication, and move on to verify their identity with an additional factor of authentication if configured. These authenticators are important at different checkpoints because we are trying to ensure only the right person has access to right machine, right endpoints, right applications. And with an application like ADSelfService Plus that allows users to access more than 100 pre-configured single sign-on application, it's important to safeguard the portal access as well. So yes, keying in the answers to my security questions, I've keyed in the captcha, I click on continue. I'm now redirected to the self-service portal, the end user self-service portal. Couple of more seconds. I want you to notice that this particular user belonging to the policy marketing does not have the option to change their password. They can sign up with different they can enroll or sign up with different authenticators. They also have access to applications. Both single sign-on applications and password synchronization applications are listed right here, but they do not have the provision to reset password. How does it look for a normal user who actually has the privilege? I'm going to click on the domain user login right here that you see. I'm making use of the demo console to actually achieve this. Logging in as a domain user from the demo setup. I want you to notice that this particular user will have a self-update layout, will have a change password layout. They have access to subscribe to and from mail groups. They also have access to single sign-on applications that you see right here, custom applications included. And this is how a typical end user portal looks, provided you as an administrator have given access to all these for a particular user, right? So it's important to be able to restrict access or provide access based on user groups, based on user privileges in a granular manner. And that is something that you can definitely achieve with ADSelfService Plus. That said, if you notice, while we reset passwords for a particular user, traditionally there aren't any complexity rules enforced. Or rather, the complexity rules is too simple and does not prevent password compromise, if I have to be brutally honest. What happens when a user who does not have privileges to change password from within ADSelfService Plus actually tries to attempt to change password operation, right? They can definitely go ahead with the native way of doing it. As long as the VPN connection is secure, the password synchronization will happen and the cache will be updated. So I'm going to key in Adam's name right here, key in the old password. I want you to notice that there is a custom granular password policy listed on the screen. I'm going to give in a password that is going to meet almost all the complexity rules that you see on the screen. It looks like a good password, doesn't it? Let me show you what the password is and actually try to go ahead with the password reset. A password change. And this particular password change is clearly being rejected because the password that I keyed in has a restricted pattern or a word, which is the word password, which is also a dictionary word. So I will be able to change password the traditional way, even if I can't achieve it from within ADSelfService Plus, if I don't have the privilege to do it from within ADSelfService Plus. But the advantage here is also that when I reset a password, it has to comply, reset or change a password, it has to comply with the custom granular password policy that I've enforced right here. Once again, something that can be customized for different user groups based on user privileges, based on compliance mandates, organizational mandates, security measures taken in your organization, and much more. So if you have certain guidelines that you'd like to follow, you can customize a password policy accordingly. You also have the provision to integrate with Have I Been Pawned, which is an API service. It's a simple one-click integration. This will notify user, this will prompt users about their password being a compromised password or a password that is not good enough. And this prompt is enforced across the Gina CP screen, the ADUC console, and this will simply disallow, this will simply discourage users to set weak predictable patterns as their passwords as well. So this is also something that you can do if a particular password that the user is setting has been part of a compromised database. They will be notified and they can choose to set a better password. You can also enforce certain complexities right here from within the password policy enforcer. With that, I am going to jump to the last module of today's session that I'd like to talk about. If you do have any questions, please keep them coming. One of my favorite modules, that is conditional access. You will be able to set your risk factors, determine what conditions are safe for users to log in and access these self-service features that you have delegated access to from within ADSelfService Plus. So if a malicious user is trying to log in and compromise a user's identity or get access to an application, a business application, through a network that is not safe, a device that is not in the list, a geolocation that is not recommended, or during non-business hours, even if there is a couple of red flags right here. The application uses its intelligence to simply block access to this particular user, lets you step in, assess the situation before we understand if this is a malicious threat, if it's an insider, or if it's a user trying to get access from a different set of conditions. All right, so that is something that you can definitely customize right here. I have a couple of CA rules going on. You can also choose to assign it to different policies or user groups. You can also choose to have multiple rule configurations assigned to different policies or user groups as well, and apply this for the portal access restriction and NTLM single sign-on restriction as well. Highly recommend conditional access once again, especially if you're choosing to work with remote users on an organizational level. It's important to ensure only the right person has right access to the right machine, the right application, and at the right time. Coming back to multi-factor authentication, you will be able to customize MFA for endpoints for your applications, your single sign-on applications as well. You can work with biometrics, you can work with smart card authentication, token-based authentication, pretty much anything that works best for users in your organization, and also be able to customize it based on different user groups. With that, I have almost come to the end of today's session. A very quick recap of all that we saw that was part of today's agenda. If you have any questions about ADSelfService Plus or a particular module that you'd like me to talk about, please make use of the Q&A tab to drop in your questions. I would be more than happy to customize the session for you. But that said, a very quick recap. Password self-service for hybrid Active Directory is critical, especially if you have an Active Directory-based infrastructure that also encompasses cloud applications, right? So it's important to be able to allow users to take care of their own password management chores. For Active Directory, Azure, G Suite, for Salesforce, Zendesk, for databases and multiple other applications that you would like them to take care of, step in and take care of their own password management chores. So for which you can make use of ADSelfService Plus with multi-factor authentication, set your level of authentication, enforce different authenticators, and allow users to even remotely perform password resets and make these updates real time. The password expiration notification module is extremely important, especially if you have a huge list of users in your organization who face trouble with password expiration. You can choose to send out targeted messages on specific days and ensure that more than 90% of your workforce resets their password, it changes their password well in advance without running into hiccups when it comes to cache update, when it comes to synchronization of passwords, update with multiple other applications that work on the Active Directory-based authentication. That said, all this can be achieved with a web-based application like ADSelfService Plus, which you can choose to host on the internet as well and allow users to reset their passwords from anywhere at any time for their hybrid infrastructure. Talking about tips for better password security, highly recommend you to work with adaptive multi-factor authentication across any and all checkpoints that users have access to: applications, endpoints, password self-service portals, password self-service consoles, and also work with better password policies. Though we encourage authenticators, it's important to safeguard the first layer of defense, which is passwords itself. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to work on your password policy. So encourage users to have better password policies in place and stick to customizing different password complexity rules for different user groups, just to make it easy for users in your organization to work with these password policies that you've enforced. I would also recommend you to get started with conditional access if you have users in your organization checking in from different locations, checking in from checking in at different business hours. You will be able to customize multiple conditional access rules and ensure only the right person has right access to the right machine at the right time. And also just-in-time access is extremely critical. Users do not have to check in and have access to the machine and data all the time. And when I say users, I'm talking about your workforce. If you'd like to selectively give permission to specific users, privileged users within the organization, you can also customize your conditional access rules accordingly to ensure better security. With that, I am going to wrap up the session for the day. If you have any issues with ADSelfService Plus, running into dead ends, if you have trouble with the application, please make use of the support email ID to drop in your mail and get your queries solved right away. With that, I'm going to wrap up the session for the day. I really hope it was informative. I really hope that you get started working with ADSelfService Plus, and to encourage you to work better with this particular application, we are extending discounts, exclusive product discounts for a very specific suite of solutions to end 2021 on a happy note. If you are evaluating the application and looking to purchase ADSelfService Plus, you can make use of the link that I've passed on to you in the chat console to opt in for a discount if you're interested, and we will help you avail the application at a better price. With that, I am going to wrap up the session and take time to answer questions, if any, offline. Please drop in your questions in the Q&A tab if you do have any questions. That said, before I check out, I quickly want to put this thought across. I wish, hope, and pray you, your friends, your family, and near and dear are blessed with great health and happiness. Please take great care of yourself, and let's come out of this pandemic as happier and healthier individuals. That's my wish and prayer for all of you here today. And I'm hoping to see you all in my upcoming sessions in the near future, and hopefully in your country or mine once things get better. Looking forward, thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you so much for your time and patience. On that note, this is Sharda Murthy from the marketing team of Manage Engine signing off for the day. Thank you so much. Namaste.